Kevin here with Kind Piece Carpentry. In this video, I'm going to show the install and use of the Harvey Compass ST1500 sliding table attachment, as well as their router insert wing. Starting off here, getting all the pieces for the sliding table laid out. Initial impressions is very impressed with the actual miter attachment. Everything that comes from Harvey looks like it was designed for a space voyage. It's all heavy duty, very detailed, pretty impressive just handling the stuff. The first step here is removing this front bar, sliding it over, and then I got to remove this little half wing. What I did to store this was coated it in wax, then wrapped it in paper, taped it up, and just stored it in my shed if I ever needed it again. Here, just following the directions, trying to figure out how to get everything attached. I've said it before in my other videos, the Harvey equipment is great and very high-end. Their instructions are not the same. I think they could really do better with their instruction packets. Not impressed. This step is very important. You want to make sure that this table is perfectly level. I believe in the instructions they say to keep it just like a fraction of a millimeter higher. I can't remember if the instructions said that or if I just deliberately tried to do that. I'm not too sure, but it would make sense. You certainly don't want it lower than the rest of the table, because if it's lower, that means when you're sliding your workpiece, there's additional friction from your workpiece against the table saw tabletop, whereas what you want is you want the majority of the weight and friction on the slider attachment, not the table itself. So it took some time to get everything level. You can see the aluminum straight edge I have there. Then getting this beefy miter gauge installed. These four screws you see me tightening here with the Allen wrench, this is one of my complaints that I have with this piece. These are what control the left and right movement of the actual fence, which obviously will change based on the angle of cut you're doing. So here you can see I'm getting it set up for precisely a 90 degree because I want that fence as close to the blade as possible for maximum material support. But if you throw it at a 45, it's going to be much further away and you need to move it closer. And the only way to do that is to get that Allen wrench, loosen all four of those, adjust it, get the Allen wrench, tighten them. I really wish they had just some like knobs like you see on the backside there, and the knobs that they have on their normal miter gauge for just quicker access to loosen and tighten those so you can change the distance. Here I'm getting ready to do my first cut with the sliding table. This is for an actual project I was working on. It was a red oak entryway table that I designed it to use mortise and tenon joints. So I was pretty excited to use the slider for this project. I actually put off starting the project until I received the slider and had it all installed. So you can see here it cuts very smoothly. I did not have to do any micro adjustments. When I set this thing up and did my first cuts and checked it with the engineer square, it was perfect 90 degrees. You can see here different ways you can use it. I have a dado stack in there that I'm using to make these tenons. It makes pretty quick work of it. For the life of me, I cannot remember what project I was working on with these 2x10s. I'm racking my brain now trying to remember, and I just have zero recollection, but this is a good example of how you can cut some thicker stock with it and how I'm leveraging the stops on it. So that first cut I'm doing is to square up the factory edge, then I throw that stop block down to do the actual cut I need. And I've just got a whole process set up with all the rough boards over on the workbench behind me, and then I'm just running it through. This way all my measurements are exact. This is a good example too of how the over the blade dust collection is useful. So this, another example of doing some consistent angle cuts. This project is for some Raider jacks, which is the Marine Corps Special Forces logo, the MARSOC logo. So I'm cutting these shields, and I needed a specific angled cut on each side. And I was knocking out 4 of these, so you can see the stock leaning against my workbench behind me. Just get my first measurement set, do the test cut, and then I know that stop block is right where I need it. And I just batch all these out. So another great example of how when you're making multiple of something, the slider attachment with the precise stop blocks really increases your efficiency in the shop. So this nifty little dovetail jig I made here probably deserves a YouTube video in itself to explain how I did it. I haven't seen one out there quite like this, so I'm not bragging, but I must say I'm pretty proud of myself for coming up with this. But I designed it in a way to where it locks right into the T-slots on the miter gauge. So without this sliding table attachment, I would not have been able to do dovetails like this. The precision and accuracy that it gave me is unmatched. I was super impressed with it, very happy with how it turned out. Here's the final product. You can see there's no plywood here, no MDF. This is all true laminated black walnut, all dovetails. And it's all because of that slider attachment. All right, next we have the router kit coming up. You can see here's the current state. First step is getting everything unboxed, and I'm gonna have to take that composite wing on the right. I'll have to take that off. Getting everything laid out and inspecting it. Again, very impressed with the quality of product Harvey's putting out. It's crazy just looking at this stuff. All the detail and the engineering that went into it. They've got a higher price point, but this is why. The quality of stuff you're getting is very high.
All right, so here's an example of the crappy instructions that Harvey has. It's kind of frustrating because it makes me feel stupid. This shouldn't be that complex, but I don't want to lift a 100-pound piece of cast iron here and then not have the right screws. These are all the old, these are all the old bolts that I took out. So realistically, I could probably just reuse these. But I'm the type of guy that's going to follow the instructions because I assume the instructions, are made for a purpose. So, I've got all the stuff laid out that they provided. I'm confirming the hardware list. They give you 5 of these, which is here, and those are labeled as mounting screws. Then over here in the image, they show just using 4. So then why do you have 5? That makes me second guess that they're the right screws. Also here, you need 3. 1, 2, 3. So then I should have 6 or 7 of those. But then there's just 2 of these, and these are also labeled mounting hardware. And in the instructions, they don't tell you which ones to use. So it would make sense that there's 4 here, so I should have 4 of these, not 5. And up here, there's 3 I need, 1, 2, 3, so I should have 3 of these, not 2 of these. And nowhere in the instructions does it specify if you should be using E or F. Like, all they would have to say is use E or use F to mount them. We provided an extra, but it makes you second guess it. So last thing I want to do is move around this 100-pound piece by myself just to find out, these don't fit or they're not long enough. I could have just reused the old ones. So it's just like little stuff like that. I don't know. I don't know if they're just giving you extra that you don't need in case you have a different brand table saw or what, but the instructions aren't very helpful.
All right, I think little rants like that are important because it shows that you're getting honest feedback here. If I'm frustrated with a certain feature of it, I'm gonna let you guys know, and that's what I expect. Before I buy a tool and I do some YouTube searching, like, I want honest feedback from the end users. So comment below if you've also bought Harvey stuff and have felt my same frustrations with the quality of instructions provided, or if I'm just being a diva here.
I'm actually not going to use the bolts that they provided because I can't get the Allen wrench in there to secure it. because of the angle. And I'm not gonna clamp down on this with a vice grip, so I'm just gonna use the bolts that were already in there from the composite extension that I removed. So not using the ones they provided with the kit, I'm gonna use the original.
Here I'm just playing the game of doing micro adjustments on the legs and the tightness of each bolt as I do some slight adjustments with a leather plated mallet to get those surfaces perfectly flush.
All right, it's all installed. Everything's perfectly level. Before I move on, I want to treat the top. I use carbon coat on here. I've got a video doing a review on the carbon method ceramic coating. So I need to retreat the main table, and while I'm at it, I'll get this cleaned up and treat that.
This part takes a little bit of time, but it's very important to ensure that your router lift insert is perfectly level and flush with the top of the cast iron. It's pretty easy to do, just a whole lot of guess and check as you're dealing with 4 contact points with all the screws. Actually more, I guess it's 2, 4, 6, 8 contact points. But just a lot of guess and check going back and forth until you have it set up perfectly. This fence, again, it's like it's off a spacecraft. So many knobs and numbers and stuff. I've never been the one to actually follow what those numbers mean and trust them. I'm just a guess and check guy. I'll cut, make an adjustment, check it, cut, make an adjustment, check it. Up until this point, I've just been routing a temporary dust collection system to the table saw, but now that I had the slider put in and the router attachment put in, I tore it all out and really did a Frankenstein setup here. It looks a little sloppy, but it actually works really well. I have that lever there that allows me to initiate the limit switch activated blast gate just by standing in front of the table saw. And then same thing over here for the router. I just need to reach under, hit that limit switch activated blast gate, and my dust collection turns on automatically. And then obviously will turn off once I close the blast gate. So it's a pretty slick setup that I'm very happy with. These are some of the first cuts I did on the router table, leveraging both the left and right stop fence. What I'm doing here, this is for a glass enclosed shadow box for a coin display for myself actually, and all I'm doing is recessing a groove to allow the hinge to sit flush in there. So very simple but perfect example of a project that you would need a start and stop block for. The dust collection on this thing works very well. Anytime you have dual dust collection from the router lift itself underneath and then also the fence, as long as you have it set up right, there's essentially going to be zero dust that's put out. It's going to capture all of it, so very impressed with that. The last thing I'll show here is this Harvey Compass Featherboard. The design is very unique and it's pretty sweet. I've used it a bunch, extremely happy with it. Harvey has figured it out with this Featherboard. You twist this gauge and it moves the wheels out, and the wheels only spin in one direction. They're rubber coated. They grip your material very well and they only allow it to move in one direction, preventing kickback. Setup is simple. You zero it out by just moving the wheels up to the material, and then you only need to move this about 3 or 4 ticks and it applies constant pressure on your workpiece. Even if there's small consistencies in your workpiece, like if you're pushing through some snipe or if there's a rough or live edge on one side, those wheels have constant pressure on it, so it'll keep solid consistent pressure against your workpiece, pushing it against the fence. So here's the complete setup I have when everything's put together. I've been using this for a couple months now and have been extremely impressed, very happy with the purchase. I want to use it for a few more months. There are some cons that I do want to highlight, but I want to give everything a fair shake for a few more months. So the next video that you see me put out on this Harvey system is going to be highlighting some of the things that I do not like, as well as many of the things that I do like. So stay tuned for that. Reach out if you have any questions.